The National Board of Regents weren't very kind to Sterling College. In fact, they were so angry that they pulled their accreditation. It started with students transferring to other colleges and having to retake occasional courses. That happens to anyone who transfers. The problem was that most courses offered by Sterling College weren't transferable. The courses didn't measure academically anywhere. The College Board sent a couple of investigators down to Sterling Forks to look at the operation there. They started examining the credentials of the staff. They found an English as a second language instructor dropped out of high school in 11th grade to have a baby and never graduated. She didn't even have a social security number or a driver's license, but her students loved her, and her class was always well attended. She had no known job history. She was an adjunct professor and was paid in cash under the table. Her credentials were impressive, though. She spoke 6 languages, for without a trace of an accent, and one of them, an obscure Slavic language called Grunish. It was only spoken in 2 places in the world, a small part of Serbia and a small town in western Pennsylvania called Ringertown. Her other qualification was her religion. She was full gospel. She grew up less than a mile from the other full gospel seminary in Export, Pennsylvania. She was a snake whisperer. She also gave the college a $500,000 endowment. Because of that, nobody ever checked for credentials. There were similar problems in other departments. Doctrinally, they belonged there. They could handle snakes during church without getting bitten. They could quote scripture until the cows came home. Academically, they were found lacking in documentation, especially in the humanities subjects. Most of the doctorates were from Oral Roberts University in divinity. They had a few actual degreed professors and instructors. They were proudly listed in the brochures, handed out at various high schools. They answered ads in magazines, or were recruited to fill some strange diversity quota, needed to create an aura of authenticity. The place was a diploma mill. Sure, they actually held classes and made the appearance of being an actual college. The alumni happily endowed the place because the classes were easy to pass. They awarded degrees. It was almost impossible to flunk out. The students actually thought they were going to college. They took out loans and got government grants to go there. Admission was easy. The college was the main industry in Sterling Forks. The town bustled with fresh-faced young men and women. They all did the usual college student things and shopped at the stores that sprung up in town. Being a dry county, there were no bars. There was a 7-Eleven, Iggy Cohen's Women's Wear, a computer store, a bookstore, a coffee house, a drugstore, which doubled as a Greyhound bus terminal, a variety store, a hardware store, and a couple of empty storefronts which had for rent signs in the windows for future occupants. Except for Iggy Cohen's and the 7-Eleven, everything was in a strip mall on Main Street, owned by the college. It was done in the same style as most of the campus. Fast and dirty, made to look richer than it was, stucco over concrete block done in a blend of Spanish provincial and antebellum plantation. It looked nice in pictures, but in reality was semi-tacky. It was window dressing at its finest. After 40 years, things were wearing thin. The make-believe degrees were the tip of the iceberg. The preachers they produced, since Charlene's departure, couldn't write an intelligible sermon. They could more or less preach, but they couldn't publish without help. The ultimatum was given: upgrade to board standards, or close and face criminal fraud penalties. Word leaked out into town. A panic ensued. Parents came and picked up their children who were students in the liberal arts program. Within a month, the place was a ghost town. Only the divinity students stayed. The government didn't regulate religious studies. Neither did the college board. However, when everyone else left, there were only 16 divinity students. Out of a population of over 1,000 students, there was no profit to be made. In fact, the divinity students didn't contribute enough money to maintain the paperwork, much less the payroll and maintenance. The facility in Pennsylvania had closed because of increasing land values and suburban encroachment, so this was the only seminary for that branch of the Church of God, a full gospel church. Action had to be taken. Not only was the future of the college at stake, but the future of the town was at stake as well. Fred Katz was getting frustrated with dealing with the pornography magazines. Because of their semi-legitimate nature, payment for his work was sporadic at best. What he got wasn't what the work should demand in a legitimate marketplace. He had two more novels in the can, but publishers were shunning him, and he couldn't find another agent willing to take him on. Suddenly, he had a bad name in the industry. At 3,500 words a day, he was losing ground as a writer. He had hit his stride. He was cranking out reams of material. He would upload it and wait. Occasionally, a magazine article would hit and he would get a check from a legitimate source for a couple $100. But the life of a freelance writer was hard and solitary, and he was just barely keeping the lights on and food in the refrigerator. He had heard the rumblings from the college. A couple of years earlier, he tried to get his old job back. His MA degree in literature was from a real university, and he had a book out in the marketplace, even if it was out of print until he could afford a lawyer to untangle the copyright on it as well as the other one that barely saw the light of day. He was worried that his lifestyle as an author in a small college town was at stake as well. The college had said no to his overture, but with the change in status of the college, as well as the new right-wing regime in the federal government favoring religious colleges, he decided to give it another crack. He wrote a letter to the college. He was about to put it in his mailbox when he found a letter from the college there from the day before. He opened it. Dear Mr. Katz, we have reconsidered your query on renewed employment with our fine institution. We have decided to make you an official member of our team here. You are going to be awarded a doctorate on the merit of your published work and put in place as our English department head, if you so desire it. The degree will be predated to your employment at this institution. Please come at your earliest possible convenience to sign the necessary papers. Harvey Sterling, President, Sterling College. Suddenly, Brad was a tenured professor of English. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. It would be nice if the college could last until the beginning of the next term. He was ecstatic. The continued existence of the college was the question, though. Here he was, a pornography writer, the head of the English department of a Christian fundamentalist religious college in the heart of the Bible Belt during a repressive conservative Republican administration. He laughed at the irony of it. He also had his work cut out for him. He knew the English department. When he was an adjunct professor, he had the only degree in the department from a real university, except for a female instructor who had a degree from Quinnipiac in Connecticut, but vanished in the middle of a semester. There were no legitimate degrees. He knew who she was, but he wasn't sure he could get her to come back to work. He had met her a few years back, briefly, and had interacted with her on a few occasions. She seemed happy where she was. He needed to get her back to work to be successful as a department head. English is one of those fundamental requirements for a legitimate college degree in America. He also had to fix the glaring deficit in the ESL part of his department. There wasn't even a high school diploma there. The lady was popular with both the staff and students, but she was the trigger for all the trouble. He had to do something. He had no idea in the world as to what to do. She was doing the job and doing it well. There was no real record of her being there either, so he had considerable wiggling room. He decided to meet with the administration and accept the challenge. He had nothing better to do.